Be sure you have at least one yoga block today. 2 might be even better. Otherwise, you can just make it work for yourself. Can you hear the music? Yes? Yes, okay, good. I just want to make sure you can still hear me too. I've got a new playlist. Look out. Some of it's really, I would say intense, maybe. I hope you like it. Sometimes I'm intense. Okay, let's begin in a reclining position on our backs, like we've been doing in constructive rest, which means your feet are going to be a little bit wider, and then your knees are going to taper in and touch each other, if that's comfortable. However, if that is not comfortable, then build something else for yourself. And just drop in. Notice how your breathing is. And if you'd like to change that breathing cycle, just notice how that changes your experience inside your body, inside your mind, inside those fluctuating states of being in terms of your emotions. And as we progress in our practice, we just become more skilled at those changes, and we can not really flip it like a switch, but more like a dimmer. So we can kind of turn up, turn down, and rebalance things for ourselves all along the way. Acknowledging the state of things, especially in terms of your physical body right now. Some of the work that we'll do today might be dancing on the edge of your comfort zone. It's possible that you might even experience something that feels a little bit crampy or congested. And I'm not asking you to just embrace that mindlessly, but I also encourage you not to run from it, but maybe just to kind of stay the course and do your best. We're going to keep our knees kind of tapering in like this so that the shins stay kind of separated. And then draw our legs up so that the knees land over the hips. And then you can replace, or place, I should say, your block between your knees. And then maybe you can turn in those thighs just a little bit more towards the surface of the block. Sometimes it helps to take those hips a little wider to find that rotation. So if it still feels uncomfortable, you could turn your block the wider way instead of the skinny way, and notice how that feels. And if you can carve out a few more degrees of movement, just kind of seeing that the shin bones are horizontal and the thigh bones are more vertical. Now you're going to keep this position, but you're going to create a mini circle, which is going to challenge your core a little bit, and also a little bit in those hip flexors. So this can be super small and subtle. Do try to keep the backside of your ribs connected at all times, even if that means making this circle smaller. And then go the other way. Keep trying to spin your heels wider apart from each other as you turn the top side of your thigh towards the surface of that block. Now, the bigger your circle is, the more challenging it's going to be to keep those natural spine curves intact. You can kind of trace those edges, back off when you need to. And then just hold your block with your hands and try to bring the soles of your feet together as your feet come, as your knees come apart. So now you're going the opposite direction with the hips. A little bit of external rotation and a little bit of abduction. Let's come back to holding the block with the inside of the thighs and then turning the top side of the thighs towards the block's surface. And then we're going to alternate. Bring feet together expand the thighs apart. Let's do 3 more. We'll just alternate back and forth. I'm going to do 1 more. And then the block can go off to the side. We'll bring our feet back wide again. And this time we'll just do the really relaxed windshield wipers, letting the knees turn to the left and to the right, and especially noticing the hip that is going inward. You might get a little stretch in the quad, especially if we can keep our feet apart quite a ways. Like the more you can separate the feet, the more opportunities you're going to have to experience that hip internal rotation. So much so that the inner knee might get really close to touching down to the floor. But again, no pressure. 2 more times. Now we're going to revisit a skill that we've worked on before, which is to use these wipers and a pulling effort to create a transition up and down off the ground. So we're going to call these pinwheel pull-ups. So you can watch first if you want. You're going to turn your legs to the right. Now your right arm is going to push into the floor as you curl up and reach across your body with that left arm. And then roll back to the floor. Let your legs turn over to the left in the pinwheel. Your left arm is going to pull, so you got to push down into the floor and then reach with that right arm across towards the left side. And we're going to try to create a little bit more of a moderate tempo here. I like to keep my core flexed, so my head's even off the ground and my shoulders are off the ground. And then I'm reaching and pulling. When the legs go right, the left arm reaches across. When the legs go left, the right arm reaches across. And you can really connect to that bottom arm as well to really push you away from the floor. Next progression, we're going to come from the forearm to a straight arm, pressing up onto your palm, and then maybe you can reach even further across. Roll back. Forearm to palm, a little more of a reach. Keep going. Think about shortening the space between your lowest ribs and the front ridge of your pelvis. That's where you're going to get that front ab contraction. Now the next time you come up and over to the right side, you're going to stay up and then shuffle your legs and your body so that you're kind of on your mat and your legs are in this pinwheel shape. The right leg's in front, and I'm not mirroring you, so it's your right leg, and then your left leg can be pulled off to the side. And we're just going to sit here and breathe and try to ground the legs. If it helps you to lean over here to the right side a little bit, you can do that. To intensify the stretch on your trailing leg, you can move that knee backwards more. To back off on that sensation, you can pull that knee forwards towards your right heel. And then let's just take a micro upper body twist, and we're turning to the right with the sternum, with the tallest spine that you can manage. Return to a neutral position, and let's just swap out the legs. Left leg comes out in front. That hip is in external rotation. Right leg is coming out to the side in internal rotation. Intensify. You move the knee backwards on that trailing leg. To make it less intense, pull that right knee forward towards your left heel bone. Press down with your legs, sit up tall in your spine, and just breathe. Stay tall. like a fireman's pole, and then rotate just that upper trunk to the left a few degrees. You can turn your head even a little further, let your eyes flick over your left shoulder. Next stop is tabletop. I'll let you decide how you're going to get there. Send the fingers wide apart on your mat. Anchor down through those big knuckles that connect your fingers to your palms. And as we shift forward, we're going to let the shoulders go beyond the fingertips. Let the hips dip a little bit, but squeeze your bum. And then lift and tuck the toes. Stretch your hips back to your heels. That's the little mini flow. Shoulders forward, untuck your toes, let your hips sag a little bit, but squeeze your butt. Lift and tuck toes, rock back. And it's just going to keep rolling with this a few times. You're pulling with your arms, and then you're pushing with your arms. Can you connect that energy to the shoulders and the fingers and wrists? Kind of feels like a baby learning to crawl. Now let's hold the next time we come into that forward shift and re-ground your fingers. Really press through the floor with those base knuckles. Squeeze your bum. And then when you go back with your hips, tuck your toes under. And you're going to try to peel your flat palms and fingers off the ground and make lots more wrinkles in that front of your wrist. So try to shine your palms to the front side of your mat. Pull your fingertips back towards your nose. Last 2 breaths, focusing on wrist extension. Beautiful. Let's just move organically now in our own version of cat and cow. If you think your wrists need a little roll or shake, do that first. You've all done enough cat-cows to know that there are many ways to approach this. You can create a rhythm with your breathing. You can switch that up to reverse the breath, or you can start to move your spine segmentally, or you can add in some of those funky spirals, working the spine around in a loop that feels almost like a jump rope as you move through extension and flexion. Keep going. And then one last little thing for the feet and the toes. We'll give the wrists a break. Tuck your toes under. Sit back on your heels. If this doesn't work for your toes for some reason, you can get out of the hinge and instead just sit on the tops of your feet. Two more breaths. And then when you come back to tabletop, let's do it on our forearms. Option to take your block between your legs again, just as a landmark to work with. Broaden across your shoulder blades. You're going to lift the shins and feet off the ground, but keep your knees connected to the floor, like you're trying to kick your seat with your heels. Now turn the top side of your thigh bones into the block. That means your toes are going to point out east and west. This one, we're holding and breathing rather than moving through repetition. Notice if the back is arching, and can you almost go the other way with that and make it more like cat pose? So you're trying to round up your mid-back, maybe tuck the tailbone slightly, and breathe for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Relax. Set aside the block if you were using it. Not losing it. I might be losing it. Let's go to down dog. Tuck your toes, reach your hips back, and then feel that beautiful stretch in your lats, your ribs, through that spine column. And you can explore here a really deep pedaling sensation in your ankles and toes and knees.
Just letting the pelvis kind of teeter side to side when you do that. Now lift your heels a little higher and walk yourself forward. Casual forward bend, letting gravity create a little space in your vertebra.
Can create a little head nodding or a little swaying, shoulder shrugging, unshrugging.
Now in this forward fold, let's try a couple things. Let's come up just a little ways, maybe even up onto your blocks. Turn your toes outward a little bit. So now your heels are just a little closer together and you have rotation externally in your thighs. Just notice how that feels on both the front side of your hip and the back side. And then maybe you try to fold again. I just get a different stretch on my hamstrings with my legs turned out slightly. Now we'll do just the opposite. Start to point your toes inward and let your heels point outward, any degree, and then settle back into that fold and notice what you notice. Let's go parallel with our feet now. Toes and heels about in the same line. Feet can be together or hips width. Root down through your feet, come all the way to standing. Give your buns a squeeze when you get to the top. Inhale, two arms reach. Exhale, pull down with your left arm and reach up and over with your right arm. Inhale through the center. Pull down with the right and reach up and over with the left. Side bends. We'll do one more set like that. Follow your own breath. Inhale to reach, exhale to pull and lean. Last one the other way. On your next exhale, we'll let that pelvis tip forward so we can fold over the legs again. Step back to a plank. Energize fingers, toes, and everything in between. Try to find that long plank line. And as you start to bend your elbows, you're going to think of pulling your hands to your toes to wrinkle up your mat, go all the way to the ground. Untuck your toes, toenails into your mat. Really light touch with the hands. Draw your sternum up. Come all the way to the floor. Neutralize your spine, tuck your toes, push back, tabletop or plank, and then you're going back to down dog. Deconstructing this first sun salute, and then we'll get a little rhythm going with our breathing. Let the hips lean right to left as the feet stay planted and neutral. And now turn your toes out. Bring your heels closer together, like a ballet dancer first position. And I'm sure this comes as a shock to all of you, but I've never done ballet, except for really poorly in bar class. Now lift your heels up super tall. Turn your toes to point towards each other, and then let your heels get a little lower. So now your thighs are turning in. Lift your heels again and just neutralize your legs and your feet, and then tiptoe forward. Come back to that fold. Feet how you like them. Halfway lift, inhale. Exhale, we'll fold. Inhale, rise to stand. Take another breath in there, and then you're going to hold your right forearm with your left hand. Just try to stretch your right arm a little taller, and then take your spine up and over to the left, using a little bit of traction along that right scapula, rib cage, even through the armpit. Come back to neutral. Right hand is going to hold the left forearm. First, we're going to stretch vertical, and then take that arc to the right. Back to center, take a tall reach. Pelvis tips you forward on your exhale breath. Come up halfway, lengthen it out. Refold. Plant your palms, step it to a plank. Same actions as before, the whole body creating intentional tension. Keep breathing smooth. In one piece, try to pull that plank to the floor. Find a little back bend. You can release all the way down to neutralize. That way you can tuck your toes. Keep that neutral spine. Push the floor away to plank or tabletop. Downward facing dog. Hips reach up. Ray, it's so good to see you. Just noticed you snuck in. Okay, so now you're going to kind of build your own sun salutation. I'm not going to give you a whole lot of guidance here. You can just get your feet forward to the front of your mat. Create an inhale and lengthen halfway up. Exhale, refold. And then the inhale brings you up to reach overhead. You can take side bends if you want to. Otherwise, you can just kind of reset Tadasana or fold forward again. And then there's that little half lift. You're refolding. You're doing this at your own pace without rushing. A plank. You could even do a forearm plank. Eccentric push-up, which means we're pulling to the floor or halfway to the floor. And then let's focus on a nice, strong backside for some sort of a back bend. Sphinx, cobra, up dog. Downward facing dog is our next stop. And we're going to do that all again on our own. And I'm going to seal my lips. And we're just going to do our own thing for one round of sun salutation. When you're ready. As we go back to downward dog, we're going to take a little reach with that right leg. Left heel, let's keep it heavy for now so we can find that kind of little ankle stretch that we do. And then turn your right ankle a few times. Step your right foot next to your right thumb. Let's stay low in this lunge. Let your right knee drift forward slightly. Keep your left knee grounded, but pull your heel up towards your seat. Now we're going to come back to that sneaky hip internal rotation. So you're turning the thigh bone inward, which means your foot is going to come towards the left edge of your mat. Do try to keep your pelvis neutral, so try not to crunch in this left side waist. That's tricky. Now reset your left toes in a neutral position. Raise your back knee. Come on up to a high lunge. Arms can be out in front of you, hands to your heart, cactus, or even over your head. We're going to step forward to a chair pose. Arms, same thing, any position. Do get connected on your heel bones and across the ball of your foot, but try to make some space in your toes. Inhale, rise and reach. Exhale, cactus your arms and make a tiny back bend up top. Inhale, reach up. Exhale, forward fold. A long and strong half lift on the inhale. And then you can take your vinyasa if you want it, or we're going back to traditional down dog for a breath or so. Nice. From your downward dog, when you're ready, it's left leg up, right heel heavy, left ankle spinning. Can you turn just the ankle? Shift forward, step forward. Lower your back knee, lean your body into your front leg, squeeze behind that right knee, try to close it, and then internally rotate your right hip bone. So it's trying to turn towards the left side of your mat. Your right heel is spinning open to the right side of your mat. Reorganize that hip to neutral. Lift your back knee, make sure the legs are ready, and then you're coming on up to a high lunge. Brilliant. Utkatasana will make it fierce. Find your depth, one that is sustainable but challenging. Relax around the neck and inner shoulder. Reach from that outer shoulder. Inhale to rise. Exhale, pull down and curl back. Inhale, reach tall. Exhale, hinge and fold. Optional vinyasa flow. We'll start it all over again from downward dog. In your downward dog this round, we'll lift the right leg, bend our knee, and then turn the hip a few times, either in a full circle, or you can just do the axial rotation, which is to keep the knee and the hip in line and just turn the thigh bone. Step it forward, back knee down, float your lower leg, inwardly rotate the thigh. Unrotate the thigh, high lunge. The next stop is going to be a single leg chair pose. So there might be a little wibble wobble as we find our balance on the right leg, and we're trying to squat in the right leg in a way that really challenges the ankle and the knee without going beyond that comfort border. 2 feet down, inhale, reach and rise. Exhale, pull down, curl back if you want it. Inhale, reach. Exhale, fold. Halfway lift, like a deadlift. Optional flow to down dog. This is where the music gets especially funky, I think. Left leg, reach it, bend it, twirl it, or just do the internal, external wagging of the hip. Step it up. Back knee down, lift the shin, pivot in with the hip. Reboot neutral, rise it up. Crescent. Crescent to balancing on the left leg in chair pose. Try to redistribute the weight all across that foot tripod. 2 feet to your mat, rise and reach. Breathe in. Exhale, pull down, curl back. Upper body extension. Inhale, stretch. Exhale, fold. You know the way. Take it back. Down dog or flow. Okay, we're going to step forward again with the right leg. This time, have your blocks, or just bring your fingertips to surround your foot and then lift your chest a little bit. Now you're going to bend that back knee. This front leg can stay bent or straight. And then try to lift the heel and turn that bent leg inward a little more. So it's almost like you're trying to tuck your left knee behind your right leg a little bit. If you want a little more front hamstring stretch, straighten your front leg. Now reset your legs for that high crescent lunge, or you could do a warrior one with your back heel all the way to the ground. Single leg chair, step it up. Pull your knees to meet. They don't have to touch together, but try to keep them in about the same line. Now stand up in your right leg, and this time we're taking the left thigh to a horizontal position. Roll your thigh in. Heel's gonna kick out. Now roll your thigh out. Heel's gonna kick in. 2 more. Many of you have done this with me before. Just remember, this is not an opening and a closing of the leg. It's just a turning of the thigh bone inside that hip. Now let's step back and open to a warrior two. And you might have to fidget with your foundation a little bit. Inhale, reverse warrior. Exhale, side angle pose. Inhale to a reverse triangle, breathing when it makes sense for you. Exhale, hands come back to the floor and we lift our back heel off the ground. From here, we're just going to step back to a plank flow or right to down dog. Stretch your left leg up and back. Step forward. Fingertips to your mat, heart lifts a little bit, or maybe we have those blocks again and the chest comes up a little higher. You're bending your back leg. Front leg can be straight or bent. And then you're going to lift that right heel a little higher and try to spin your thigh inward. That's the back leg. Now you might feel that here in that front fifth pocket area. That's your TFL. Trying to almost tug that right knee behind the left knee slightly. Now adjust your stance so it's crescent or warrior one. Come on up. And then as you push into both legs, spring forward and stand on your left leg. Settle your right knee right in front of your hip. Turn to internal rotation, but try not to hike up the right side of your pelvis. So stay long on that right side. Now roll the thigh outward. The heel pivots to the inside. 2 more times. Take it slow. I'll show you from the front. Inward rotation. Outward rotation. Last one. Now we're going to build our warrior two. Left toes turn to the front. Your right foot is angling slightly inward. Inhale, reverse warrior two. Exhale to a side angle. Maybe just one extra breath there. Next inhale is reverse the triangle. Low runner's lunge, pivot the hips to neutral. Plank flow or down dog. I'm going to keep adding on to that. Right leg up and back. Step through. Bend that back knee. Front leg can be bent or straight. Turn your back hip in as much as it wants to go with your heel lifted. Foundational stance for warrior one or crescent lunge. Equal weight distribution front and back leg. Push to stand on the right leg. Hip rotations each way without moving the knee outward or inward, or just spinning like a rotisserie, the left femur. Warrior three, kick back. Try to find a line from your left heel, through your left hip, through the spine, all the way out the top of your head. Now we're going to find that warrior two so we can open it up. Reverse warrior two, inhale. Side angle, exhale. Open up to that plie squat. It's a goddess squat. Let's go a little narrower with the feet than we're used to. So your knees, they might be getting close to going over the toes. So like you're sitting on a really big fat horse. Pull your legs apart. Try to track those knees east and west. And then you're going to keep this left leg where it is, not change that position, but turn your right leg so that it's straight and the outside edge of your foot is parallel to the short edge of your mat. So it feels like a side lunge. Lift your left heel off the ground. Turn your left hip inward. Maybe we bend the knee a little more. You can kind of test in and out of that. The left leg turning in. The left pelvis pulling back. And then please go back to your warrior two on your right leg. Reverse your triangle. Right leg goes straight now. Now we're headed into triangle pose. So you can think of this left hip still turning in. Tip your pelvis. Right hand to your shin or a yoga block. Left arm is reaching either straight up vertical. You can hide it behind your back. Or it can reach the same direction as your right toes, beyond your ear. Notice if the right shoulder is creeping up by your ear and try to snuggle it back down and in. Take your left hand to your hip. As you lift this left heel, you're going to bend your front knee and turn back down to a runner's lunge. That's kind of a new transition. I don't do that one very often. Now shorten your stride by a little bit. Pull your back foot a little closer. And then let's find a traditional pyramid. Your back foot is going to be on a diagonal, trying to face your hips both to the front edge of your mat. And then this is where those blocks can come in super handy. Okay, next stop is probably a new one for some of us. Rebend your front leg, lift your back heel, walk your blocks out in front of you if you're using them, and then you're going to step your left toes behind and to the right of you as much as you want. Right heel's going to stay down, and that left foot is in an exaggerated curtsy lunge. So left leg behind and to the right of the right foot. Couple more breaths. Now you're going to find a standing L. Kick your left leg back, level out your spine and pelvis. Think of a little cobra in the chest. So those upper back muscles are in mild extension. Right hand's going to stay on the block. Turn your pelvis open, lift up out of that right hip, push, and then open to your half moon. Kick strong through your left glutes and try to open the left leg all the way at the knee. Take up a lot of space in your half moon. Try to be as big as you can. Powerful polarization of all four limbs away from your midline. Turn back around to that standing L and step back with your left foot and knee comes down. Now these blocks could be useful as we move into just a half splits variation. I'll give you some choices here. You can just do it your way. Or if you want to prioritize, once again, this hip internal rotation, you're going to swivel so your left shin moves outward on a diagonal. The knee stays where it is, and that left thigh bone turns in just a little bit. The front knee might want to bend a little bit. It's totally cool to let it do that. And your front toes can be pulling or pushing. And then we can reset to neutral pelvis and hips. Optional vinyasa flow. It might feel nice to reach the right leg into a downward dog splits for a moment or two and maybe even roll open with the front side of your pelvis. Kind of trying to point the belly button slightly to the right. Downward facing dog. Just regrouping, assessing breathing, trying to make it really smooth, like a wave. And stretch your left leg up. Open the front of your left hip. And then step your left foot up to meet your right. You're in a low lunge to begin. I gotta think about what I did next. I'm having a brain lapse. Oh, I remember. So maybe the blocks here or fingertips is fine. You're gonna shorten your stance a little bit, maybe. See how it feels in this front leg. Bend your back knee. Turn that back leg in slightly. What is that noise?
Oh, somebody outside.
Okay, let's find a strong push from the back leg. We're going to come into that standing L. You can walk your blocks out ahead of you. Kick your back leg straight, kind of like we do for warrior. And then bend into your left knee. Rock your weight backwards slightly. Step your right foot behind you to the left. So your toes might touch, they might not. You're just trying to kind of squeeze your inner thighs together and pull that right foot behind you and over towards the left. Shoulders and chest, maybe trying to keep them more neutralized. Bring your right leg back to a neutral position. And then step back, find the warrior two. That might have been slightly different from the first side, but we're just going to keep moving. It'll all work out in the end. Reverse your warrior two. Nice stretch through both sides. Side angle pose, finding that lateral responsiveness from the core. Let's find that plie squat, but with a little bit more conservative stance. So heel toe the feet in a little bit narrower from where you were in your warrior. Bend your knees, take your trunk vertical. So there's not much of a lean in here. We want to try to make some space here in this front hip flexor area. And then you're going to try to keep your left leg where it is. And stretch your right leg straight. Go back to the goddess. Keep your right leg where it is. Stretch your left leg straight. Now you're going to lift that right heel. Turn your leg inward for inward rotation. And you're just going to kind of test the waters there, bending your knee a little bit, letting your pelvis move to that right side. This is really going to challenge that front leg quad as well. Right leg is bending and turning in. Left leg is straight and strong. Now left side, warrior two again. Pivot your left toes to face forwards. Angle your right leg in slightly. There it is again, that inward hip rotation. Reverse triangle to triangle. Pelvis is tipping first. That right hip can pull forward slightly. Maybe we use a block under that left hand. Top arm, we have choices. Vertical reach, overhead reach, or behind the body tuck. Do try to think of shoulders stacking vertically and trying to lean your shoulders back slightly, but do button up the front ribs. Couple more breaths in the triangle. And the transition is to maybe rebend your left knee a little bit so you have some control there. Lift your right heel off the ground and then pivot back to the neutral position. And you're going to shorten your stance for a pyramid pose. This is where I like my blocks. Right toes turning out slightly, but trying to square up to the front of your mat with shoulders and the whole mid-body, the torso. Feel that breath expanding you in 360 degrees all around your torso, your ribs, your belly, your back, with equal measure, equal pressure. Let's try that standing L again, or you could get rid of the blocks altogether and make more of a spine extension in the upper back for the warrior three. I'll leave that up to you. We're trying to find full kick and reach through the right hip all the way through the heel or the toes if you're pointing. And then rooting down through the left foot tripod, trying to balance out the pelvis. Let's try to turn that right thigh slightly inwardly. That's going to balance us out a little bit better. Now bend your left knee, maybe hands to blocks for the step back. We're going to find some kind of a splits variation. So the front leg is working open. Doesn't have to be all the way. The back leg can be in neutral rotation, or if you tried it on the other side, we'll stay on the knee and rotate your thigh so that the heel and the foot come away from your midline. I like to squeeze my glutes when I do that. I remember what I forgot. I forgot the half moon, but we can get there from here. That's the good news. Let's take a couple more breaths in the split here. It's good training for this front leg to be all the way straight for our half moon practice, but remembering that the half moon could still have a bent knee. So tuck your back toes, shorten your stance a little bit, rebend your front leg. Blocks are going to push out ahead. We're finding a balanced level pelvis first, standing L. Now make the right hand lighter. Push down more through the left side. Spin open to the long side of your mat. Try to pull your right toes towards your nose. Kick strong through the right hip and stack. Shoulders on shoulders, hips on hips. It's a big pose. Kicking in all directions as you push down. And you can pivot back to that neutral rotation, 2 hands to your mat, another step back. Optional vinyasa flow, or we're going to take a little break before we move into our core stability practice in some side plank variations. I'm going to get a sip of water. So you could, on this next series, you could do some of this work from a forearm plank, but in my opinion, that's actually going to make the work even harder because you're having to fight more gravity because you're going to be almost horizontal. Whereas if we are in a palm placed side plank, our weight is more distributed on that diagonal line. But I'm going to leave it up to you to decide if the wrist or the shoulder get a little tired, just give it a break. Because some of the stuff we're going to do here in this side plank is going to take us a while to get in and out of it. So the endurance, if the endurance is kind of buckling, then we'll just give ourselves a rest. Situate yourself so that your knee, the right knee and the right hand are going to be somewhat centered on the mat, but it doesn't have to be perfect. And then you're going to turn your right toes behind you to the short, long edge of your mat and open up first to a modified side plank on the right knee, right palm. You're going to press into the left foot for starters. So that top leg is all the way extended. We're trying to push into that foot and the right hand so much that that right knee might get a little lighter or maybe float off the ground. And then you're going to try to turn that leg inward. There might be a cramp there for you. Lift and float it. Turn that leg outward. So your shin is basically going to be moving in a diagonal line, but that's only because the hip is turning in and out. So let's do a couple more like that. Lift and pivot, set it down, lift and pivot the other way. Now the heel and the foot and the knee, those are landmarks. The motion is happening at the hip. Can you feel it? Couple more. Okay, so neutralize your right hip now. So maybe the shin now is parallel to the front of your mat. Let's get off of this right hand and come up to gate pose. Vertical spine, reach your right arm. And then just slide that left arm down the left thigh, any amount, for a lateral stretch. Rotate your right wrist. Rotate it the other way. Come back to vertical. Just gently lay your right hand across your chest. It doesn't even have to touch. You're just holding it out of the way. Left arm's going to come out like a wing. And now you're going to teeter your body to the right on a diagonal. Finding some glute engagement here, and of course that responsive lateral core. Reset the right hand down. You're back to the first version, kneeling side plank. And then you're going to bend your left knee. So that's the top leg, so that you can get your foot flat. This left hip is going to be open. Now we're going to tug this right leg underneath us, pull it out in front, external rotation, internal rotation. Kick to the sky with the heel. Try to shine the sole of your foot to the ground. 3 more times. Pivot around, pivot in. A couple more. Okay. You're going to come back down with that right knee. Turn towards tabletop. Sit back on the heels. Child's pose is fine too. Take a breather. And then let's move on. We're going to arrange. So we're on left knee, left palm. Modified side plank, or I should say plank variation, because it's not really modified, what we're about to do. Can you get your right foot all the way flat? That's a turning of the ankle to keep the knee straight. If that's not happening, it's okay to bend that knee and kind of turn the toes so that your foot can touch the ground. You're going to push down with the top leg and the bottom arm enough that you can float the shin on your left leg, turn your hip inward, set it down. Neutralize, lift, pivot externally. Set your shin the other way. That one's probably going to be a lot more accessible for us. Keep going, lift and pivot in, lift and pivot out. Can you try to keep that knee directly under your hip joint and spin the thigh? 2 more times. Last time. Now set your shin down, neutral position, push the floor away, bring your spine upright. Engage the back side from the tush. Left arm is going to reach. And then just slide the right hand down any amount on the outside edge of your right leg. Left side a little longer, right side a little stronger. Rotate left wrist. The other way. Left hand's going to find your mat again, off to the side like our side plank. This time, we're bending the right leg, keeping that hip pretty open, stamping down with the foot. Left leg's going to pull out in front of us. Internal rotation, external rotation. 4 more times. And you can tuck that left knee back underneath you, pivot back towards tabletop. And then I'm going to give you a choice here to either take a really wide-kneed child's with your toes together, or if you want to, you can turn towards the side of your mat. Take your knees out, hips and abduction. This feels like goddess pose, but we're on the ground, so we call it frog. Inside edges of your feet to the floor. Shins and thighs are perpendicular to one another. And then we can come down to the forearms. You could find a hybrid in between the frog and the child's if you prefer it. If you're in that frog pose, let's do just a slight posterior tuck of the pelvis, as if you were trying to shorten the gap between the front rim of your pelvis and the lowest ribs. So the tailbone drops. That's it. Let's try 4 more breaths or so. So the awesome thing about working on our hip internal rotation is that it benefits all of our other hip function. So if we can earn a few more degrees of inward rotation, that's going to help the external, the adduction and abduction, and also our flexion and extension. So basically all of the hip movement improves when the internal improves. For me, I notice sitting cross-legged is way more comfortable after this kind of work. Okay, support yourself back up on this journey. Press your palms, use your arms like a push-up. You can bring your big toes back underneath you if you're in that frog, and just pull your legs together. Spin around onto your seat. And then we're gonna start to come all the way down to the floor, finding those natural spine curves when we get there. And then let's find a few moments of self-directed organic movement, and whatever movement feels just right for you right now. Our next transition will be either to a resting pose of your choice down on the mat, any configuration, or you could take seated meditation this morning if you prefer it. Let the gaze settle on a still point or drop your eyelids closed. Take 3 to 5 really conscious breaths, heightened awareness of your ability to control and manage your breathing. And after those directed breaths, just let it all go. Feel your breath moving without trying to direct it or manipulate it in any way. Be free to be here now. As you keep your body simplified in rest, let your mind's attention be drawn more so to those areas touching the floor and the exhale phase of your breath. How can those two things relate in your mind? And then be the observer of any areas that are exposed, not grounded, and relate those spots to your inhale phase. And then put those two ideas together. On your inhale, be aware of expansion from inside to out. And on the exhale, feel that settling back in and down. Things don't have to be complex or complicated to be interesting. Take your own journey now through a series of awakening movements. Trust your intuition and instincts. And then take any route at your own speed to come back to a seat. And be curious about the state of things before you head back out into the day, enjoying this momentum-free moment of inquiry and discovery, a bit of quiet. Thanks so much for coming to practice today, for sharing your energy with me, even though it was through the interwebs. I still appreciate that. And I hope you have a great weekend. And if you're in the Zoom, we can chat for a moment or two. Otherwise, I won't keep you because I did go a little late. So sorry. Thanks, everybody. Namaste.